Assalamualaikum and good day to the panel. My name is Alissa and I would like to thank for lending your time to watch my research proposal presentation that titled The Comparison of Motive on Sport Volunteerism Participation Between Employed and Unemployed Volunteers in Malaysia. So according to Charities Aid Foundation in 2016, Malaysia ranked 22 of 140 countries in the World Giving Index, while the neighboring countries rank at the top 10 such as Myanmar at the first rank and Indonesia at the 7th rank. It also stated by Do Something Good 2012 that for every 1,000 Malaysians, there are 7 registered volunteers. It showed that the total number of volunteers in Malaysia comparing to its population size is small and need more effort in mainstreaming volunteering culture among Malaysians. In Malaysian history, the spirit of volunteerism started in the 19th century, then encouraged by religious and community revivals. But nowadays, the growth of Malaysian force with diverse of demographic factors encourage a creation of new organizations related to youth volunteerism at local and global level. According to Bastian 2015, people volunteer not only for the good of the cause but also for themselves. Kelly and Harrington 1997 also stated that volunteers are attracted to different organizations for diverse reasons. So it is important to understand their motivation that underlying volunteerism and their relationship with intention to volunteer. So we move to the next slide, which is statement of the problem. Many previous studies related to volunteer motivation were conducted and unemployed volunteers seem to be researchers' favorite sample in their study compared to employed volunteers, which make the actual motive of employed volunteer unjustified. In a general view, unemployed people always have strong correlation with voluntary activities, as in the United States, Christopher 2013 found that volunteering is associated with a 27% higher odds of employment. It showed that unemployed volunteers actively join volunteer activities to fulfill job requirements. Other than that, according to Secretary of Labour Hilda L. Solis, stated that volunteerism can be a way to help unemployed workers expand their network contacts, improve their resume, and make a positive impression in a competitive market. So, is there any significant difference both employed and unemployed motive in participating volunteer activities? So, the research objectives of this study are first, to identify the motive of employed and unemployed volunteers on sport volunteerism in Malaysia. And the second objective is to determine the differences between motive of employed and unemployed volunteers in joining sport volunteerism in Malaysia. So next is significance of the study. This study will significantly affect the sport volunteerism community, such as the volunteer themselves, sport volunteering organizations, including those who directly and indirectly related to sport volunteerism. This study also will help in providing foundation and knowledge for sport volunteerism community in assessing their motivation, joining or organizing the sport volunteering activities, so that it could give mutual benefit for each parties, which indirectly enhance the sport volunteerism development in Malaysia. So for my literature review, I found several previous studies that assess on volunteers' motivation which related to my study. So the first one is Paul Z1 2004 proposed in his study that volunteers' motivation can be comprised in 5 categories, which are altruistic value, personal development, community concern, eco-enhancement, and social adjustment, supporting the previous finding in a study conducted by Omoto and Snyder in 1995. So the second case study is conducted by Safian and Muhammad Nijat 2012, found factors that driven the university students participating in sport volunteering, where the factors were ranked from the most effective to the lowest, which are the results: first, social; second, progressive; third, career; fourth, material; fifth, supportive; sixth, purposive; and the last one is obligation. The third case study that assessed on volunteers' motivation conducted by Ham, McLean, and Listener 2008, found that purposive factor recorded as the most crucial motivators among golf event volunteers, followed by other factors, which are leisure, egoistic, and external influences. The fourth case study that I found is conducted by Ismail, Saman, and Panabas ETAL 2014 indicates that three domain motivation factors that increase their willingness to involve in volunteering activities, which are progress, purposes, and social integration, and obligation and interest. Supportive motivation factor is not the reason why they involve in the activity. This is because they are not involved in the volunteering because of influence of outsiders, but mostly they are willing to spend their time, energy, and money themselves. Hence, material motivation factor also not the reason why they involve in volunteering. The next case study is a study on volunteers in Viking Classic golf event conducted by Love, Hardin, Koo, and Moose 2011 found that the personal enrichment lead the factor of volunteer motive, followed by other factors which are altruism, escapism, golf interest, career enhancement, and prestige. Most of the previous studies found that volunteers participated in volunteering activity consistently follow the volunteerism key features by Burek 2004, which are voluntary, where the activity are performed voluntarily, non-payment, where the voluntary acting is not done from a desire for profit, and mutual, where the benefits are equally gained by individual and organization. But a study conducted by Unlu and Guzal 2015 found opposite findings where the Mediterranean Games volunteers are paid and it is causing the principle of volunteerism. Another study related to volunteer motivation but focused on demographic factor conducted by Bear, Lee, and Mesengeli 2011, they found that male and female college students displayed different volunteer motivation in work experience and volunteer abroad. The findings of this study support previous studies which also found that female differ in volunteer motivation for sport activity than did male. So we move to methodology. First is research design. The research design for this study is cross-sectional. According to Owen 2002, cross-sectional is where data obtained from the survey is chosen to represent a wider population for one point in time. For my study, both employed and unemployed samples are taken to represent their population in order to assess their motivation in joining the sport volunteering activity and the comparison on their motive. Next is sampling. The subject of my study is focusing on employed and unemployed volunteers, where about 135,000 registered volunteers over age of 15 in Malaysia. According to Table Critchley and Morgan 1970, the estimated samples need to be taken from the total number of population is 375. 20% sample need to be added in to avoid from unwritten rate or dropout. The total sample will be taken is 450. So probability sampling will be used in this study. Probability sampling is defined as a sampling technique in which the researcher chooses samples from a larger population using a method based on the theory of probability, where for my study, the participants are known which are employed and unemployed volunteers who selected randomly from the population. So let's move to instrumentation. A set of questionnaire that developed by Clary 1998 Volunteer Function Inventory VIF was adapted and used in this study for assessing the motivation of both employed and unemployed volunteers. The questionnaire consists of 30-item measure of motivation to volunteer, where the scales are divided into 6 separate functional motives, which are productive motive, values, career, social, understanding, and enhancement. This set of questionnaire was also added with demographic section, gathering information regarding gender, race, age, income, level of education, and employment status as the first section. The reliability of this questionnaire was proved by previous researchers such as Fernando ETAL 2017 recorded 0.78 and 0.84, Both girls 2007 and his 2000 recorded 0.83 and 0.94 each, and 0.82 recorded by Ismail EPAL 2014. The general rule of thumb is that a compound alpha of 0.7 and above is good, 0.8 and above is better, and 0.9 and above is the best. This questionnaire also used 5-point Likert scale from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. So next is data collection procedure. First, the researcher must get approval by ethics committee of UiTM regarding on the study. After the researcher got the approval, researcher will proceed to the next step, which is seek consent from the respondent whether they voluntary to participate in the study or not. They also will be informed that the collected data will be kept private and used only for the study. The information about participant consent will be distributed along with the questionnaire made in Google Forms through online platforms such as media social. The data will be automatically received and collected through the Google Form once the respondent done answering the questionnaire. So the last part of methodology is data analysis. The collected data will be analyzed according to each research objective. First, to identify the motives that influence employed and unemployed volunteers in joining sport volunteerism in Malaysia will be analyzed using descriptive statistics. This objective will be measured on the mean, median, mode, variance, and standard deviation. The next objective is the differences of motives between employed and unemployed volunteers in joining sport volunteerism in Malaysia will be analyzed using independent t-tests. It is because the IV is categorical, which are employed and unemployed volunteers. They differ if the differences in motive is numerical, then the observation is independent as they are two different groups that not rely on each other, and the distribution of data is normal as the total number of respondents is more than 30 according to CLT. So this is my references that I used to prepare the proposal research presentation. So that's all from me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.